Hello, world. Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Hello, world, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live from the Joy Virtual Studio right here in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of New York State. It is so great to be with all of you today. It is Tuesday, October 7th, and you see the headline for today's show: Eugenics, mass vaccination, and the unholy alliance between Donald Trump and Pfizer. Today, we are having a live exclusive with Brook Jackson. She is the woman with all the receipts, the woman who uncovered massive fraud during the clinical trials for the COVID-19 mRNA shots in the dark days of 2020 and 2021. She kept all the receipts, and now she is suing Pfizer. Her attorney is Warner Mendenhall. He is a medical freedom advocate, a complete rock star. And we're going to get to the bottom of why Pam Bondi, who works at the pleasure of the President of the United States of America, is obstructing this lawsuit from moving forward, doing everything that she can to continue the efforts of the Biden DOJ, which also tried to obstruct this lawsuit from moving forward. It's absolutely outrageous. It makes no sense, but it does seem as if maybe they struck a deal in the back room, right? We saw the unholy alliance between Donald Trump and Pfizer, Albert Burla, laid out bare last week in that horrifying press conference. And the question is, was a protection racket part of the backroom deal that was struck between Burla and Trump? As you guys know, 100 years of bad legislation, bad case law, among other things, has built an impenetrable fortress around the medical industrial complex, which looks more and more these days like an extension of the military industrial complex, because as we all know, Pfizer delivered the fraud that the federal government, the United States government, ordered through the Department of Defense. So we're going to be talking about that today with Warner Mendenhall and Brook Jackson about where their case is and what we need to do to push this attorney general into the right direction, the same way we pushed her into doing the right thing with Dr. Kirk Moore out in Utah just a couple months ago. And though she did the right thing for all the wrong reasons, that doesn't mean that we still can't move with political advocacy. And the news just gets worse and worse and worse when it comes to these mRNA shots. Tomorrow, we'll be joined with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden to talk about how everyone in the medical freedom community is celebrating, because I guess HHS is no longer recommending the COVID-19 shots. It's a new wording for a shared decision-making responsibility, I guess, between a doctor and a patient. Not good enough. People are still taking and dying from the mRNA shots, and the long-term impact of the original rounds of the shots are just horrifying. Really great reporting from Nicholas Holscher over at Focal Points, which is one of Dr. Peter McCullough's outlets. Just terrifying, horrifying, heartbreaking news regarding fertility. Also, the amount of cancers. I mean, this is just one of the headlines, and we're going to be going over all of this tomorrow on my live collaboration with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden at 1 p.m. Dr. Naomi Wolf will be joining us in that crossover half hour. And then she has a great show for you tomorrow on call with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. But we will be looking at this Focal Points study that was released on Courageous Discourse. The first population-wide study finds COVID-19 vaccines and an increased risk of multiple cancers. So official government data from nearly 300,000 people tracked for 30 months show that the mRNA shots significantly increase the risk of overall cancer, breast cancer, bladder cancer, and colorectal cancer. This is a groundbreaking peer review studied that has just been published in Exley Journal. And for the first time, researchers have formally analyzed the long-term relationship between the COVID-19 vaccination and cancer hospitalization in a population-wide cohort of nearly 300,000 residents of the Pescara province of Italy. This is devastating. This is building on a mountain of data that has already emerged about how toxic these shots are. Anything less than pulling them off the market should not be acceptable to anyone in the medical freedom community. And we'll be talking with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden about that tomorrow. But this is something that is relevant in our discussion with Brook Jackson and her attorney, Warner Mendenhall, today as well. We are looking at, I have a video here, actually. Well, I'm not going to play it now, but we'll play it for Brook when we bring her in. Glenn Beck just had Dr. Oz on his program, and they're pushing out this meme, this narrative that the unholy alliance and the horrifying marriage between the federal government, Donald Trump, HHS, and Pfizer, which happened last week, was actually the Pfizer people coming to the table and, I kid you not, bending the knee to Donald Trump and apparently pledging fealty because, Pfizer is the biggest, baddest pharma company in the world. And once Pfizer comes to the table, everyone's going to come to the table and they're all just going to cut deals. They're all cutting backroom deals. Trump probably gets naming rights for Trump RX on the back end. That money will go to his family. I don't know in any instance ever in the history of Donald Trump and the Trump family did he ever name something or have naming rights to something without getting a kickback on the back end and royalties. So we don't even know the nature of that deal, but it is all just very unsettling and highly distasteful. And people are still dying. People are dying. They are maimed. They are sick from these shots. And apparently we just can't have a reckoning in this country yet. Well, we're going for it. That's why we refuse to forget about the COVID vaccine injured. We refuse to forget about what happened, the democide of 2020 and 21. And you guys know that this will be a major part of this show moving forward. Also, we're going to be looking at another breaking study. There are multiple studies that have been commissioned through the McCullough Foundation and Nicholas Holscher. I'd love to get him on the show. He's doing such great work. Tragic, horrifying, devastating work. But they are establishing everything that needs to be established to get these shots off the market. And another breaking study showing that COVID-19 vaccines, shots, bioweapons are linked to 63 serious central nervous system, brain and spinal cord adverse events. And he writes here, the CDC FDA safety thresholds have been breached as COVID shots disrupt the blood-brain barrier, unleashing meningitis, encephalitis, prion disease, brain abscesses, herpes reactivations, and more. And this was a study using VAERS data from January of 1990 through November of 2024, where they compared adverse event reports after COVID-19 vaccines to those after influenza vaccines. Again, devastating. All falling on deaf ears. I was talking to Mary Bowden yesterday. We were preparing for our show tomorrow. And I said, I just cannot get past this gaslighting of the COVID-19 vaccine injured, people who have had debilitating adverse injuries, their entire lives turned upside down, people who have lost loved ones, whose children have died hours after taking the COVID vaccine, hundreds of thousands of them, if not millions of them, completely gaslit by this administration. Has Bobby Kennedy Jr. even acknowledged the vaccine injured or the vaccine dead publicly since he's been in charge of HHS? I haven't seen anything. Let me know if he has. But to me, that is just horrifying. It is monstrous. And we're going to have this discussion with Brook and Warner today. We're going to continue this discussion tomorrow with Dr. Naomi Wolf and Dr. Mary Talley Bowden at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Tomorrow, during the Shannon Joy Show, we also have Peter Schiff. Huge day today for gold, reaching the $4,000 per ounce threshold, first time in history. Gold is telling the market something. And while this is good for those of you who took our advice for the past 2.5 years, actually for the past 10 years, I've been advocating to my audience. I've been buying physical gold and silver for almost a decade. And for those of you who have been doing that, stockpiling, moving portions of your Roth IRA or your 401k or your retirement into gold, this is good news for those people who had the foresight to do that. But the sad reality is that 90% of the American public have no clue what is coming. And gold and metals are telling this story. Unbelievable. 4,000. This was a good commentary from the Kobayashi letter. Actually, it was in response to the Kobayashi letter. I follow them. Gold officially crossing the 4,000 per ounce for the first time in history. It is now worth in total upwards over $27 trillion. And there is no end in sight for this, because the people who have their heads on straight understand that the profligate spending, the money printing, the debt and deficit spending is happening not only in the US, but in China and in developed countries across the globe. It's happening all over the world as governments continue to try and trick their people into believing that we actually have functioning economies when we don't. And this Trump administration is making things infinitely worse with his tariff actions. And we're going to go into some of those headlines before we get to Warner Mendenhall and to Brook Jackson. But this was good commentary on gold. And this is the deal with gold and silver, metals in general. The value of gold and silver and metals in general will increase as the amount of chaos and corruption and money printing increases in federal governments and governments across the globe. So it is a direct relationship between gold and profligate, criminal, corrupt spending by our governments. And it is very clear, even with the shutdown of the federal government, that once they get into their back rooms and they strike their deals, they are going to spend more and more and more. Print and spend, print and spend. And so that is going to create more inflation. And the tariffs are making the already created increasing inflation even worse. And it's crazy. I mean, I don't know how people can believe this stuff, but Donald Trump, yesterday he comes out in all caps, nothing to see here. The economy is booming. Everything is great. He's been very busy nailing gold leaf to every square inch of the Oval Office. Looks absolutely ridiculous. Building a 90,000 square foot, completely unnecessary ballroom using $200 million of printed taxpayer money, right? They're just printing it out of thin air. And that's just devaluing your dollar. That's why everything is so expensive. Everything, all right? Frivolous, ostentatious monstrosity is are tripling. Your eggs prices are tripling. Energy is quadrupling. Housing is quadrupling. People can't buy homes. It's insane. It's insane. But no, Donald Trump, good news for the holiday season, everyone. This is what he pushed out. Early prices are down, while tariffs are making our country an economic power again, in all caps, says Donald Trump. Also, virtually no inflation. He is with a straight face. Who believes this stuff? I don't know what to say to people who believe this stuff. It's insane. It's insane. He says virtually no inflation as stock markets continue to hit record highs, right? The stock market, as you all know, is 100. So Trump, dangling a little $1,000 to $2,000 rebate check is too little, too late. Right? You don't steal money in the form of inflation from the taxpayers to the tune of 18 grand and then, dribble back to them some, meaningless little $1,000 rebate check. It's a joke. Everyone should be angry about this because he is tanking this economy. And listen, it's not just me I told you from the very beginning, tariffs are taxes. And now Fortune magazine, with this headline, it's obvious. Anyone with a brain on their head that is screwed on straight, that is not worshiping at the cult of a political party, whether it's the Democrats and Biden or the Republicans and Trump, Here's a headline from Fortune. Trump's tariffs may be bringing in a lot of revenue, but they've also been a tax on capital so far, says a top economist. All right. President Trump's tariffs, not the lies that are being shoveled to you by Donald Trump. You're going to get a heap full of coal. This is putting pressure on corporate profits, labor markets, and prices, according to Morgan Stanley's chief economist, Michael Gapin. He draws a striking conclusion in his Monday research note in the U.S. Economics Weekly. Quote, tariffs have been a tax on capital so far. And this is why we, the people, need a bailout. This is why the farmers need a bailout. And this is why they're also looking at pursuing lowering interest rates, which you do not do when an economy is booming. This is why they're also looking to ramp up the money printing as well and increasing spending. Really bad. This is also another piece on this. Tariffs weigh on U.S. manufacturing as activity contracts for the 7th straight month. U.S. factory activity shrank in September for a 7th consecutive month as factories grappled with the fallout from President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs. The Institute for Supply Management, ISM, it's a survey, a private survey. We're not getting any data from the federal government because they're shut down, are now looking at the health of the economy after the government shut down. And what they are reporting in key economic data, including closely watching employment reports for September, the import duties dominated responses in the ISM survey on October 1, with some manufacturers of miscellaneous goods complaining that steel tariffs are killing us. The paperwork related to tariffs was also causing materials to be held up at the borders. The uncertainty surrounding trade policy has not been resolved, and Donald Trump is already indicating that he's not done with tariffs and unveiling more duties recently. In fact, right after he told you that the economy was just swell, it's booming, and there is absolutely no inflation whatsoever. All right? Oh my gosh, this is Orwellian. Calgon, take me away. He writes this. Okay, this is another. On the same day, beginning November 1st, 2025, all medium and heavy duty trucks coming into the United States from other countries will be tariffed at the rate of 25%. Thank you for your attention to the matter. So that's going to bring all of the corporations to Washington, D.C., hat in hand, to try to negotiate a deal with this government, which is looking more and more like a fascist enterprise. And, very good analysis from one of my favorite new Twitter accounts, Nobody Special. He'll be joining us next week on the Shannon Joy Show. He's great. It looks more and more like this government is gearing up for a wartime economy. We're going to get into that with him. No good news here. No good news. And right now, as I've mentioned before, everyone in the know, all of the big investors, everyone who knows what's going on and is not worshiping at a political cult is moving into gold and silver and metals. And they're doing it very quietly because they don't want the little people to know about it. So they're hoarding gold and silver, moving quickly into physical markets, land, real estate, and pushing all of the American people onto Bitcoins and meme coins and tokens. And this is what Arnold Bertrand, I thought his analysis was good on this. He said, I was studying other times in history when gold prices because this is a big deal. I mean, gold at 4,000 is a big deal. And honestly, I think that I don't think that we have begun to see how high gold and silver are going to go moving forward. But he said, I was studying other times in history when gold prices, and Arnold Bertrand is an entrepreneur. He was the founder of House Trip, which is now TripAdvisor, which he sold. So he does a lot of economic commentary on Twitter. And he said, I was studying other times in history when gold prices more than doubled in the reserve currency of the time as they did in the past year. It's rare and almost always a sign of profound loss of confidence in the existing monetary and political order, going all the way back to the Roman Empire, the so-called crisis of the 3rd century. He said it's often marked the transition of one era of power to the next, the fall of Rome, Spain's decline from world power, the French Revolution, the terror in the end of Bretton Woods, etc. And that usually war is usually accompanying all of that. And I do, that's why I'm in a bad mood today. I'm in a bad mood because I really do think we're moving towards war. I think they are going to move us into World War III. And I think Trump is the guy who's going to do it. He's the Trojan horse. And what is tragic is that so many on the right, so many conservatives, so many Republicans believe that he's the guy that's going to save them. And he's the guy that's going to lead you right off the cliff. And I can't stand watching it, and I hope I'm wrong. Like always. He said, interestingly, it's often actually as much a cause as a sign of these episodes, as this is effectively, listen up, a transfer of real wealth from the poor to the rich elites who protect themselves with gold and real things. This being what ignites the political upheaval. They began this with locking you down in 2020, and Trump did that. Determined who was essential and not essential. That was just the beginning. The second act is about to unfold, and we still haven't had a reckoning for the first, which is what we're going to be talking about with Brook Jackson and her attorney, Warner Mendenhall, when we come back from this first break. So we are going to be heavy into the economics tomorrow on the Shannon Joy Show with Peter Schiff. He has been consistent, a truth teller for the past decade. Also, we're going to introduce you to a new expert, Henry Yoshido of Rocket Dollar. And then next week, I have another round of experts lined up, including, I'm pretty sure I've nailed down finally, Catherine Austin Fitts. Because if you thought COVID-19 lockdowns were bad and the pain was bad with that, buckle up. We haven't had a reckoning. We haven't even had real truth yet. They won't even acknowledge the truth about what they did to us in 2020, 2021, and 2022 under 2 administrations. And this is why here at the Shannon Joy Show, we are not left, we are not right. It is the truth every day, nonpartisan. Because as you know, we believe that both political parties are responsible for this. In fact, they use each other in order to push us off this cliff. Just tragic. Diog99, we need to go full Amish to protect ourselves. Mark the Regan, I see you on the live chat. CJP Rumble, I see you on the live chat as well. Ralph the Flying Dutchman, great to see you multiple times this week. And we also have a couple new faces here on the SJ live chat, which I absolutely love to see. Resterly, welcome to the live chat. Welcome to everyone. Guitar Lily, Bill Benz. You guys look fantastic today. Of course, the Shannon Joy Show is broadcasting live on Rumble, on Twitter, Spreely TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, every podcast platform you can ever imagine. So proud to be joining our friends over on the Died Suddenly platform as well. Massive, massive reach. And thank you to our producers. Thank you to TJ, who is making things happen today on the Shannon Joy Show. We are going to go to a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to bring in our guest for the day. You see the headline. I mentioned we have not even achieved a reckoning or even truth on what happened in 2020 and 21, the democide that was committed against the American people, the scamdemic, and the bioweapon that was released, the vaccine, so-called vaccine, that is now wreaking havoc on so many American lives. And even though our guys are in the White House, so to speak, we're not getting the rhetoric or the action that we need. We're going to be talking with Brook Jackson, who is suing Pfizer for the fraud that she discovered during their clinical trials. We're going to get an idea of where her case is and retell her story, and then talk to Warner Mendenhall about the apparatus, the protection racket that exists in the United States that has been built up over the past 100 years with roots in eugenics. This idea that the government shall have access to your body through forced and coerced medical interventions. that is solidly established. It's completely anti-constitution. It's completely anti-human rights and natural rights, but it has been enshrined into American law over the past 100 years. And much of that has to do with the stranglehold that the eugenicists have gotten on our system. We're going to be talking with Warner Mendenhall about that in the next hour here on the Shannon Joy Show. So keep it tuned right here. We're going to go to a quick break. We'll be back in a moment right here on the Shannon Joy Show. I want to talk quickly, though, about Rocket Dollar. They are new sponsors of the Shannon Joy Show. You guys are going to meet Henry Yoshida. We're going to do a full hour on the economic pain, inflation, and what regular Americans can do to protect themselves as we move towards recession, potentially depression, and conceivably even a currency collapse. You need to protect yourself. You need to protect your family. And one of the ways that you can do that is through a self-directed IRA. Go to rocketdollar.com/Shannon Joy today. There's a free guide that you can sign up for where you can learn all about how to take control of your investments and your retirement. You can do that through Rocket Dollar. It is rocketdollar.com/Shannon Joy. That is rocketdollar.com/Shannon Joy to learn about how you can invest in real estate using your own hard-earned retirement savings. First, a quick word from our sponsor over at Kimchi One from Brightcore. This is an amazing product. You guys know I've been focusing on my gut. It's something that I haven't really paid attention to for most of my adult life, but we need that good 85 to 15% good bacteria to bad bacteria in our gut. And here's some interesting information. Did you know that U.S. life expectancy peaked at 78 years in 2014, and global life expectancy is declining for the first time in 30 years. And this is because people are aging faster than ever before. Why? Because of toxins in the air, chemicals in our soil, in our food, and other external factors, including mass vaccination, that are new to these generations. And what people don't know is that we can actually fight aging on a cellular level. And Kimchi One is one of the ways that you can begin to fight that battle. I take it every day, 3 capsules. It's 100% made in the USA, all natural, non-GMO, and it will support your gut. Right now, Kimchi One is 50% off, 50. But that is only if you use the toll-free number. Call them, have a conversation, 888-912-4317. Right now, limited time, 50% off, free shipping, and they are giving away a free bottle of vitamin D3, which is like a $30 value in and of itself. This is just for the Joy audience. So you have to go to mybrightcore.com/joy. That is mybrightcore.com/joy. The 800 number is right there. If you use the promo code JOY, you'll get a straight up 25% off. But, let's have the conversation. Give them a call. Again, 888-912-4317. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. And as you know, it is our mission to stay out of the medical industrial complex. It seems like everything that has to do with health is actually poisoning us. And that's why I am so thankful for my sponsors over at Juvenon, Blood Flow 7. There's such great information coming out, tons of research on nitric oxide. and the health benefits and how important it is to make sure, your blood flow is so important. It delivers oxygen to every area of the body. And it's very important that your blood is flowing. When you have nitric oxide, appropriate levels of nitric oxide, then you can make sure that oxygen is being delivered throughout your body. It's super important. In fact, a new study from the University of Exeter found that drinking nitrate-rich beetroot juice actually lowered blood pressure in older adults. The effect was attributed to reshaping the oral microbiome, which led to a more efficient conversion to dietary nitrates into nitric oxide, a molecule that helps to relax and widen the blood vessels so that your blood can flow and deliver all of that great oxygen to your brain and your heart and your lungs. And so this is one of the reasons it's so important to work into your repertoire. Blood Flow 7. If you go to bloodflow7.com/joy, that is bloodflow7.com/joy. You will get 25% off plus free shipping. It is a botanical complex that boosts your nitric oxide production, has resveratrol to support healthy blood flow, and also bioperine for maximum absorption. This product from Juvenon is a daily supplement, and it is patented. It's a formula that works by boosting your body's nitric oxide, the NO levels, by up to, get this, 230%. It opens up arteries up to 62% to improve your blood flow throughout your body. And so this can stave off heart attacks, strokes, other ailments. It's so important. It means that you're getting more oxygen and nutrients to your brain, heart, and muscles. And the best part, it even acts as a little bit of an anti-aging agent, which I always love. Right now, it is 25% off plus free shipping. Go to bloodflow7.com/joy. That is bloodflow7.com/joy to learn all about this great new product. Okay, without further ado, I am so pleased to welcome into the Joy virtual studio very good friend, Brook Jackson. Man, we met, 4 years ago. Maybe 3.5 years ago. She is the woman with all the receipts. She uncovered a massive amount of fraud that was happening during the clinical trial period conducted by Pfizer. She is accompanied today with her attorney, Warner Mendenhall, another wonderful friend of the Shannon Joy Show. He is a medical freedom advocate and an absolute warrior. We've been watching so many of the cases that he has been bringing over the past 4-5 years, fighting for bodily autonomy, medical freedom, and justice for those who have been tragically harmed by not only the lockdowns of 2020, but also the rollout of the COVID-19 mRNA bioweapons. So Brook Jackson and Werner, welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. I'm so glad both of you could be with us today. How are you?
Good, Shannon. Thank you.
All right. We're going to go to Brook first. Warner is warming up in the bullpen. You look beautiful. As always, it is so great to see you, girl.
It's good to see you too. I was trying to remember when we first met, but I can't. So there's been so much that has happened, and I've met such wonderful people.
I know. It was so long ago that we met. The first interview I did with you, Brook, was audio only because I was on AM radio. So I had not even platformed the Shannon Joy Show to video. It was just an audio broadcast. And you were one of the original warriors, man, just a regular mom, right, in Texas, doing your job, right, as flabbergasted and shell-shocked as all of us were when we were locked down in March of 2020. And you were working at one of the sites that was conducting the clinical trials, the Pfizer clinical trials, that were necessary to obtain the emergency use authorization to roll out the distribution of the COVID shots under Operation Warp Speed. And what you saw from the very beginning really blew the lid off of what was really going on. Did you
Yeah.
realize when you began this battle? And I want to get an. I'd love for you to retell your story if you can, just quickly to the audience. We've grown this audience by hundreds of thousands since the last time you've been on, and so there's so many new people here. If you can just recap your story, and then we'll go into. I mean, would you believe here we are, 5 years later, two administrations, three actually, a Republican, then a Democrat, now another Republican. As you're suing Pfizer for an extraordinary amount to uncover their fraud in a federal lawsuit. But, let's just recap the story first so that people can understand kind of what you went through. And then we'll get to your case, where it is, and the outrage of Pam Bondi and the DOJ trying to smash you guys down, which is just outrageous. But go ahead.
It is outrageous. So back in 2020, I was the director of a clinical trial organization that was participating in Pfizer's phase 3 trials. So we were enrolling patients into the study, collecting informed consent, collecting all the data through their participation in the study from the time that they were injected until the time that the study was supposed to end. So I was on the job only a couple weeks, 18 days in total. And during my time there and learning about Pfizer's protocol, learning about this vaccine and watching how this study was being conducted, I was receiving study correspondence from Pfizer, and what was happening with the study wasn't making sense to me. So the design of the study, the way that my company directly was conducting the trial, the way that we were reporting data, including safety data to the FDA, just wasn't making sense. I'd been doing this for 20 years. I was a director of a very similar company, prior to that, did that for almost 10 years. So I also audit clinical trial data. So when I went into the site and was reviewing data that we were collecting from patients, I just recognized right away that we had a serious problem. We were fabricating data, falsifying data, not collecting informed consent. And a lot of these things, I've had a lot of criticism about the site just being sloppy. Well, they certainly were sloppy, but what we were doing was, again, fabricating data, falsifying data. And this was data that was going to be used to support an authorization or not. So if it's not accurate and complete, then to me, that's fraud. And I took that information, what I was seeing in my sites directly, and kind of through the correspondence I was getting with Pfizer, recognized that this was a bigger problem than just in Dallas, Texas. So there were 131 US clinical trial sites that I imagined probably were having the same issues that we were. So I took the information to Pfizer, tried to get Pfizer to, make some changes, do the right thing, at least exclude our data from being submitted to the FDA. And, when I got pushback from Pfizer, I knew at that point I needed to take it to the FDA. And I did that and was fired about 7 hours later, six and a half.
Was that in 2020 or 2021?
That was in 2020. So September of 2020, prior to the emergency use authorization being given for Pfizer's stuff in December of 2020. So before anything was rolled out to our healthcare workers, our first responders, those at higher risk of developing complications from COVID. So very, very early on.
What are the odds that you would bring this to the Department of Justice, you would bring this to the federal government and essentially blow the whistle on Pfizer and be fired literally 7 hours later? I mean, there had to have been communication between the federal government and your bosses, or whoever was employing you. What do you make of that? I mean, because clearly they were colluding together. They're colluding now.
Clearly. And my attorneys believe that, once I made the call to the FDA, that the FDA made a call to Pfizer. Pfizer then made a call to my company, and I was terminated on the spot. My access taken immediately. And I mean, I was shocked. It took me a while to just kind of come to terms with that. I've never been fired before, in all the years that I've been working. So it was quite a shock then. But learning what I've learned over the last 5 years, I would say that uh, this is kind of business as usual for Pfizer and the U.S. government.
What do you make of the unholy alliance, the marriage between Donald Trump and Albert Burla of Pfizer, given what you've gone through? And we're going to get to your lawsuit in a moment, but many are saying that this is indicative. Dr. Oz on Glenn Beck said that the $70 billion deal between Trump administration, U.S. government, and Pfizer, along with the creation of Trump RX, is evidence that Pfizer is bending the knee to Donald Trump and this administration, and this is all super great. Glenn Beck, we have the video. Actually, it's a minute.
Yeah,
TJ, can we run this video real quickly? I'd love to get Brooke's response to this. Can you run the video of Glenn Beck and Dr. Oz and what they had to say about this alliance between Trump and Albert Burla?
Why Pfizer, for the love of Pete? Why did you have to start with Pfizer? Pfizer just has that bad COVID ring to it. Are they the only ones that are going to do it?
Oh, not at all. In fact, we have another company next week, one the week after, another one the week after. We have them all coming in. Pfizer is a bellwether. A lot of the other pharmaceutical companies look to it for guidance and leadership. Its CEO, Bourla, which that's his image right there, is a leader in the industry. And so when Pfizer was willing to come into the Oval Office and bend the knee and tell the president they understand why he feels so strongly about MFN, and they get the joke and they understand that they need to change their practices. And if we're willing to do what's required to make global pricing fair, it's going to work. Then it sends a signal to every other pharmaceutical industry player that this is the way it's going to have to be. And you know what? It's working. They're all coming in. They were coming in anyway, but now they're rushing in to get involved in the president's program. Our goal is to get every drug possible. We want 95% of all drugs sold in America to be at most favored nation pricing by the time the president has done this wonderful 4 years.
Yeah.
Brook Jackson is suing the Pfizer and the federal government for absolute fraud. What do you make of that interaction, especially given the fact that we haven't seen this president or Bobby Kennedy Jr. or anyone in HHS even acknowledge the vaccine injured or vaccine dead? What do you make of that interaction between Beck and Oz?
When I saw Pfizer, Borla, and Trump shaking hands, it's just like it's such a blow. I mean, trust me, if it were not for the people who have been injured by this bioweapon, I would have been out of here a long time ago. So it was just so, I could imagine, hurtful for them and just disgusting from my point of view. I'm glad he explained what MFN is, the most favored network or nation, sorry. And in my opinion, I think, Pfizer is probably, doing what they're doing because they're owed one, right? Scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And why, what else did he say? Why all the other companies go look to Pfizer for guidance and leadership? No, I think that they go to Pfizer because they look for ways to get out of being in trouble. I mean, it's so sad, the history when you look back at it. And you talked about this earlier. There's like 100 years of case law. When you take the time and you go back and you read these lawsuits against the pharmaceutical companies, it's evidence that's being handed to the court from people who actually witnessed what was going on. Doctors, scientists, researchers like myself, we're handing over the evidence. So it's nothing that can be disputed. And as a matter of fact, in our case, Shannon, the FDA, the DOJ, none of them have ever disputed what I've said. Not one time on the record have they done that. So, the Beck and, that it's just so to me for the people that
It
are hurt.
really, it's mind-boggling, bending the knee when if getting a protection racket from the federal government, enjoying liability protection, getting Pam Bondi sicked on your adversaries, people who are trying to hold your corporation accountable. So the full weight and power of the DOJ in full protection mode for Pfizer, getting the government to pay for manufacturing and development and research, also enjoying full liability protection and extended liability protection, plus government contracts for 500 plus new mRNA technologies, plus universal vaccines and other expansions of the pharmaceutical industry. If that's bending the knee, well, man, I mean, I don't know. Like that,
Yeah.
it seems like they're getting a sweetheart.
Warner and I were talking about this before we came on, but who's going to ensure compliance with these drugs? We certainly can't rely on the FDA. So, I mean, there's just so much. I have so many questions about this deal, and I'm sure we'll learn more as, the time goes on. But again, to me, when I see these types of deals be made, knowing that this Pfizer is a habitual offender, not just one case here or there. This goes back, there was another case Warner and I were talking about, the Bextra case from 2009. It was Bextra, and there was an anti-kickback lawsuit filed against them. And the Department of Justice helped Pfizer get out of the trouble they were in by helping them create a shell company. And CNN actually did a fantastic job on this 6-minute segment. And Anderson Cooper was on there too. I try to retweet this as often as I can, but that's just, I don't understand why we keep contracting with a pharmaceutical company that, acts like the drug cartel, really.
Well, one of the answers to that, I think, has been discovered in your case. And, Brook's case is important because of discovery. It was Brook Jackson's case that led to the release of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pages of documentation from the Pfizer clinical trials. That was then picked up by Naomi Wolf, an extraordinary effort, 3,000 volunteers, researchers, scientists, medical doctors to pour through the pages of the fraud that Pfizer committed for the government. One of the answers to your question, why is the government so involved in covering up and protecting Pfizer? Well, a lot of that has to do with the fact that Pfizer is creating the bioweapons and the fraud that the government ordered, that the DOD ordered. Can you talk to the audience a little bit about the nature of your case? If you can briefly overview it and give us an update as to where it is and where the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi are today, in really making it very difficult for you guys to move forward with this. And we're going to talk to Warner Mendenhall in just a minute. We're going to continue. But an overview on the
so much better at describing the case. But, after December of 2020, December 11th of 2020, when the emergency use authorization was given and some journal publications were finally coming out, and I was looking at the numbers, I knew that they had not excluded contaminated data. Speaking of contamination, we'll talk about that in a minute, but it excluded data that they should have. And so in January of 2021, I filed a False Claims Act lawsuit on behalf of the American people. The contract with Pfizer was for a safe, effective vaccine for the prevention of COVID-19. Pfizer and the DoD had this contract. They promised to follow good clinical practice, good manufacturing practice. And through my discovery, I knew that they didn't do that. So because it was a government-funded experiment, and everything that I found, I want a refund. That's what I've been asking for. Because it's not safe, it's not effective, it's not a vaccine, and it doesn't prevent anything. It actually causes more harm than it does good. So fast forward 5 years, about 13 months, they kept the lawsuit under seal, meaning I couldn't tell anybody that the case existed.
I remember that.
Yeah, I've since learned that you can actually discuss the what you found as a whistleblower. You just can't reveal that there's a pending lawsuit. So I wish I would have known that sooner, because my voice would have been louder. I would have tried to explain to people, if you want the shot, go get it. But at least know that this is how the clinical trials were run. And then you are able to make what I thought at the time was a fully informed decision.
Right. Could have saved lives.
Could have. So where we are now, I think we were at the point in 2024, 2025, where we were winning. I mean, I think we were going to eventually get discovery and be able to find out more about what Pfizer knew, what the FDA knew. And it was in April of this year, 2025, when the Department of Justice understood not going anywhere, that they came in to request that the case be dismissed, because a case that's claiming fraud. So the allegations are fraud. This isn't the vaccines are good or the vaccines are bad. This was fraud committed to secure an FDA authorization. And the answer is yes. But the DOJ felt like they have this unfettered right to come in and make cases that they don't like disappear. So that's
so. Let's just be clear. Let's just be clear. You were making progress under the Biden administration, amazingly, towards the end of his administration in 2024. Then the election happened. Donald Trump was put in office. Bobby Kennedy Jr. was installed at HHS. Marty Makary, Jay Bhattacharya, the good guys, swept into office. And it was under Pam Bondi, who works at the pleasure of Donald Trump, who then erased, essentially, or is trying to erase and obliterate all the progress that you had made, that you guys had fought diligently for throughout the Biden administration, just completely kneecapped you in the spring of 2025. Did she give any explanation as to what the rationale was for asking for that case to be dismissed?
Yeah, the one that I think just strikes me the most is, again, a case about clinical trial fraud that secured an FDA approval is contrary to national public health policy. So that just, if you read it, it's on page 19. I'll put it up later today. But my case against Pfizer is about fraud. And they're claiming that the case is against national public health policy. And I think that's just a, trickery in words and meant to not promote vaccine hesitancy.
I think it's actually, very clear. They're saying that the federal government necessarily needs to commit fraud and needs for fraud to be committed against the American people in order to somehow promote national health security. It's crazy.
It is crazy. I think the other reason, there's a couple more, that the burden of discovery on HHS and CDC, FDA is too great, and it's too expensive. It would be too expensive to litigate against Pfizer.
Let's build a 90,000 square foot ballroom and dump $200 million of taxpayer money into it and plaster the entire Oval Office with gold leaf. Let's do that instead of getting to the bottom of this fraud. We're talking to Brook Jackson, extraordinary case. And really, Brook, you are such a diligent warrior. I know you've been through a lot. You have fought like hell to get to the truth. And I commend you. This is now on appeal. And Pam Bondi is going to try to do this. I think what we need to do now is place extreme pressure on the Department of Justice, on Pam Bondi, We should appeal to Bobby Kennedy over at HHS, anyone with a voice, a platform, a bully pulpit, any bit of power in Washington, D.C. should know about this. It should be in the interest of every American to get to the bottom of this and to get to the truth about the fraud that Pfizer committed on behalf of the United States government and the Department of Defense, which is essentially what, and again, you know, this is because Brook had the wherewithal at the time to document and keep meticulous records. And this is why we call her the woman.
Nurses appreciate it. You know, if you do not document it, it didn't happen. And that's kind of our motto in clinical research as well. But, you know, 5 years, I've been through a lot. Luckily, I think some of the greatest attorneys out there in the False Claims Act space, Warner, Robert Barnes, Jeremy Friedman, Lexus Anderson. I mean, these are people who volunteer themselves to me because I've never paid them a dime, right? And they're just as big a heroes to me as any, and I appreciate what they've done and continue to do, because we're not done yet, right? Like, and I don't know. I'm going to take this as far as I can take it. I know that I'm right. DOJ knows that I'm right. The American people, you know, deserve a refund. And like, I'll leave. Like, just give us a refund. Let me help the vaccine injured with my whistleblower reward, whatever that looks like. I've already pledged it to Bobby. Like, I hate calling him that, Mr. Kennedy. Take my whistleblower reward and let's do some more research. Let that gold standard research. Let's do some. But they all know. That's the thing. That's what's so frustrating for me. And, you know, at one point, you know, I was afraid to lose my little bitty, like seat at the table, and don't ruffle too many feathers. Don't say this or don't say that, you know, but they all freaking know. They all know. Mm-hmm. Bobby Kennedy knows. Senator Ron Johnson knows. I'm sorry, I'm just going to go off here for a second. I will never forget being in a closed door meeting with Senator Ron Johnson, some of the frontline faces that we all love, and we don't want to, you know, say too much. But I will never forget being in this meeting, and we're talking about DNA contamination and what that potentially means to patients with, you know, let's just say a cancer diagnosis. You know, is this something that we need to be looking at? And I will never forget, Senator Ron Johnson said, we can't just, because what we were doing in this meeting was trying to develop or create an agenda for the following day, which was going to be aired live to, you know, the public. And so we're trying to come up with this agenda. And he said, we can't just go out there and tell the American people that there's a possibility that they're going to get cancer. I was, and Mary Bowden was there too. I was so disgusted by that statement, because we need to be warning people. People need to be able to take their symptoms and their scans or whatever they're looking at to their doctors and be able to discuss this openly. And I just couldn't believe he said that. And I hopped on the next plane that I could get on, which was like at 5 o'clock in the morning from DC. But I got the hell out of there. And I appreciate what he has done, certainly, like 100%. He's done great things. But damn him for saying that. Like that was 2 years ago. How many people could we have warned in that time that this is something that we know? It's now on the congressional record, right? At his own hearing. But 2 years prior, you said,
we can't say anything.
We can't scare people. People need to be scared. People need to be scared of the United States government, and people need to be scared, certainly, of the pharmaceutical companies who get away with it by the Department of Justice, by our government, helping them get away with these crimes. It's disgusting. Like, what do? You just keep talking about it, I guess, because I can't vote any harder than I did this last term. Right?
Well, and it didn't help you much, did it? Right? I mean, here we went through all this in an election season. We gave everyone the power and installed them, and now we get to talk about red dye number 27 and Fruit Loops and cereal.
And I'm not
that's all we get.
I really am not trying to be an asshole. I appreciate the things that, you know, Children's Health Defense has done. You know, you know, Bobby Kennedy. We can finally say autism we can finally talk about COVID-19 without looking over our shoulder. That's awesome, especially for the people who have children who have been harmed by these pharmaceuticals. You know, I hate it because I feel like they need to have their moment, right? Like they've been fighting these fights for decades, but we're talking about generational harm here with these mRNA shots, and people just don't understand. And again, for me, it's just so there's no gray in my world. It's all black and white. It's right or it's wrong. And my lawsuit is not about vaccines are good, vaccines are bad. It's not a war there. It's, are you going to allow fraud near our FDA approval process? If the answer is yes, then we're toast.
Right. Well, we're going to have to come up with a different tactic. And, if we are going to expend time, energy, research, resources, and organization, and it's going to fall upon deaf ears in Washington, D.C. because of politics, well, then we're going to have to come up with other tactics. And we have to go from the bottom up at the state level, at the local level, which is something frankly, I've always advocated from the beginning anyways. But Brook Jackson, listen, keep it up. I mean, I'm going to keep you on. We're going to bring Warner Mendenhall in a moment. He is Brook Jackson's attorney. And we're going to be talking, one of her amazing attorneys, we're going to be talking about this case, but also the horrifying case law, 100 years of legislation and case law with roots in eugenics that have led us to the place we are at today. And I think the reason that Brook is so dangerous to the federal government, and because they want to suppress, and the reason they want to suppress this, so extensively, is because what she really is attacking is the mechanism. It is the mechanism of bringing harmful products, whether there are certain medical interventions or vaccines, to market, and doing so fraudulently, thus harming tens of thousands, if not millions of Americans. The entire apparatus is corrupt. It's lining a lot of pockets, and it's also serving the interests of the military-industrial complex of the DoD. And I think that's the area that so many people really just don't want to acknowledge, is that our own government could do these things to us.
That's a great point. And regulatory failure.
Yeah,
I mean, it does expose, and I'm not afraid. The DOJ knows where to find me. I'm not afraid to die.
I know you're not.
Okay? I'm not. So I think about my kids. I think about your kids. Our kids have a share a love of volleyball. I think about 13 people that I met on November 2nd of 2021, and I can't get them out of my mind. And I know that there's hundreds of thousands more. And I just can't be quiet until there's some sort of justice. And I want them to be able to begin that healing process. People who've lost kids, I can't even imagine, right? Like, I don't even like to think about it, but who am I to deny, thinking about it?
Yeah. Well, they're not even acknowledged. They're being gaslit. It's horrible. Brook Jackson, this is why you're such a friend of the Shannon Joy Show. This is why we will always be friends, you and I. And I'll always have your back. We'll continue to push this as far as we possibly can. We'll never let go, ever, because the truth matters and these people matter. And there's another warrior out there, Warner Mendenhall, who is representing Brook, and I'm sure he's going to have a lot to say about this, about the actions of the DOJ and the status of this case, and also the quest for truth and justice, which we need. I know that there are so many cynics out there that don't believe we could ever get justice, but I do believe we can. And this is why I appreciate Warner Mendenhall. He's a cheerful warrior, optimistic, and just a great advocate. So we're going to bring him back into the Joy Virtual Studio. Quick break. We'll be back in a moment, and then we will devote the rest of this show to Warner Mendenhall. We're going to keep Brook on with us, but we're going to go into some of the more legalities when we can. Little tickle in my throat. When we come back right here on the get the girl a cup of water. When we come back on the Shannon Joy Show, we'll be back in a minute. set123.com/joy. Without their amazing sponsorship, we couldn't bring the show to you every day. And it's always 10% off for every Joy viewer and listener with the promo code JOY. Why do we love them? Well, among other things, the satellite phones, the generators, the solar panels, everything you need for when the lights go out. They also have the most extensive line, one of the best quality lines of Faraday technology, beanies, bags, blankets, apparel. This is a way for you to reduce your body's exposure to EMF, electromagnetic frequencies. And as we know, talking to Dr. Williams, that exposure can impact your heart health. And so a regular usage of that type of technology, super helpful. Again, so thankful to the satellite phone store, among our other sponsors. Learned anything over the past 4 years, it's to expect the unexpected. Well, proper asset allocation can minimize the impact of the unexpected. From inflation to tax rates to energy efficiencies, we can never really know what we're going to get. Allocating funds among various categories like growth, income, international, tangible assets, and cash can help investors prepare for anything. PCM & Associates practices asset allocation for a rate of return. Call Don Polano today at 1-800-536-1368. That's 1-800-536-1368 for financial independence with a wealth manager who shares your values. Call Dom today. The Shannon Joy Show. Went and had a little drink of water in the break and got that frog right out of my throat. Just concluded part of my interview with Brook Jackson on this groundbreaking case versus Pfizer. Her attorney, Warner Mendenhall, is with us now. He's been listening to this conversation, and I can't say enough about Warner Mendenhall and the work that he has done for so many amazing warriors and whistleblowers. My girl, Deb Conrad, out here in New York State. A very dear friend. You've been representing her, and of course, Brook Jackson, who has been with us. Very strong, brave women, courageous women standing up, speaking out, gathering up their receipts and blowing the whistle. It's been a very long battle, 5 years. Did you think when you got started in this, I mean, were you even involved in medical freedom, law or pharmaceutical malpractice prior to 2020 and 21? And did you think it would take this long to get this far with so many of your actions?
Yeah, as you may remember, I came out of local government, and that was my first insight into how government was functioning back in the early 90s. And I was always very concerned about government overreach. And I became an attorney in the 90s after looking at these problems, and I began to sue state, federal, and local governments for various overreaches. And they involved things like toxic exposures to radiation here in Ohio, toxic dumps, all kinds of things like that. We were also involved in FOIA lawsuits then to get information from the government. I'll give you an example. They decommissioned some of the atomic bombs, and one of those, I believe, was dumped or left south of Akron in a big landfill. And we have some magnetic resonance images. But it was these were the exposures that I was getting. And then I give you another big one for me was the Iraq War. It was clear they did not have weapons of mass destruction, yet we barreled ahead. I believe we violated international law and started that war. And then locally here, tens of people got arrested for protests and different things. So I got involved in that. I also was very concerned with the Obama administration. And we very quickly saw when Obamacare came in, how that was causing control of our medical system in general through the electronic health records. And through the purchasing of all the small doctors' practices that were out there,
Right.
we used to have
Right.
the reverse. 80% of doctors used to be independent. Now 80% of them are owned by hospitals essentially, and they follow these protocols that are not properly targeted at the individual. So these are all early things that were going on, and that's why I was sort of ready to go, I guess, in a way. I don't know that anyone was ready for this, but I had already been looking at government overreach, and I just couldn't believe what our government started to do. Frankly, I thought warp speed was a huge mistake. I thought, and then when the mandates came down, we heard from all the Democrats, oh, don't do this, don't trust this vax because it's a Trump product. And then they switched the next day when they got elected and said, oh, no, we're going to mandate this on everyone. I happen to be a science fiction fan, and it just reminded me of some of the books that I've read, where somebody does something really stupid and wipes out the population. I thought, well, this pretty much does it. You're going to zombify the population. I mean, this is what I'm concerned about. And so I think all of those things prepared me and made me very concerned when all of this was being run out. And when everyone was being mandated, I was just sick to death at that. And then I'm a father, I have kids, I have grandkids. And I saw directly the impact these shutdowns had on my children and other people's children, and what a horrific situation that did in terms of their mental health, in terms of, the normal functioning of society. So I that's a really broad overview, but all those kinds of situations had to be corrected. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that is the most difficult, I think, for the American people to grapple with, because we are so divided and we are so separated into a D versus R or a left versus right, is the fact that the atrocities and the abuses that were committed against the American people, atrocities and abuses that I would call a democide, and many within the medical freedom community were calling it a democide during the the Biden administration years. But these atrocities have been perpetrated by Republican administrations through the DOD, HHS, and FDA, and also Democrat administrations through those same entities. And so here we are back with another round of Donald Trump. You are continuing to represent Brook Jackson, whose cases have followed multiple administrations, both Democrat and Republican. And it's amazing to realize that it is Trump's DOJ, Pam Bondi, who is now making things so difficult. How, as an attorney, how satisfied are you right now with this administration, with the DOJ in terms of the lawsuits that you're pursuing with whistleblowers, and then also with the actions of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and the medical freedom warriors that we put in place in HHS? But let's start with the Trump administration.
Well, obviously, it's a real mixed bag here. I think most of us expected a much faster response. And we expected, particularly in the Brook Jackson case, that there would be a change of position. The Biden administration did oppose this lawsuit. And the Biden administration moved to dismiss it, and it was dismissed under the Biden administration, and then we appealed it. We expected when the Trump administration came in that the government would show up at court and say, oh, no, this falsification of data that was submitted to the FDA is a fraud on the federal government, and we are going to withdraw our motion to dismiss this case. Now, whether or not they would join us in discovery and all that, they did say that discovery cost would be high, which is ridiculous, like you pointed out earlier. But
I mean, am I right or am I right? I mean,
let's not gild the White House until we get the Pfizer discovery, or maybe the Pfizer settlement can pay for some gilding of the White House. I don't know. But, regardless, we need to have our priorities straight in this country. And the fraud in this clinical trial, which has been exposed now to the nth degree with all the documents that were released, it has only reinforced Brook's case. Every page that gets released of millions of pages has reinforced Brook's case. And now with the DNA integration issues and the contamination issues, and there's even production issues. There's mold contamination in the production that was part of another lawsuit. So all of those things should be bundled up, and the federal government should correct this wrong and right this ship. And it's just not doing it. And it's very frustrating. And I do feel, moving on to the people that were appointed, I'm so happy with the appointments. And I know these people, Jay Bhattacharya, Bobby Kennedy, others that have been appointed in the DOJ even, that I really appreciate that they're there. But what is obvious to me is the tight constraints that they have on their messaging. So they are not able, even though I know that Bobby Kennedy, for example, knows all about the DNA contamination, all about the possible links with cancer and other horrific diseases, autoimmune diseases, they don't seem to be doing anything about it. And I think that's not because he doesn't know, he knows, but because he's constrained. And I think part of it is Trump is so proud of warp speed, and warp speed's a total disaster. It's the wrong way to pursue anything like public health policy. And and even beyond that, I could talk all day about this, but it's really not public health policy. I mean, let's make sure we remember that this is a Department of Defense contract specifically for military readiness. It says it in the contract. And since when did the population of the United States become necessary for military readiness? I mean, think about it. And even our military, we shouldn't subject them to an experimental shot like we did with this and with anthrax.
Can you help us understand the story of, because this is another area that Bobby Kennedy just refuses to acknowledge, and I understand he's under a lot of pressure and he can't say certain things, but what is the story of the military rollout of the fear campaign, the pandemic? We now have evidence. I had Dr. David Martin on a couple of weeks ago, and there's evidence now that is blowing this whole Wuhan thing out of the water. That COVID-19 wasn't cooked up in a lab in Wuhan in China. It was actually cooked up right here in the United States of America in the 1990s as part of like these military operations. Like, what is the story on that? Like, what are we all just guinea pigs? Are we human experiments? Do they see us as the enemy? Are we enemy combatants here in the US? Like that they have to, because we have little germs rolling around in us and they have to this is really hard to wrap your mind around when you consider, and this will, go ahead.
If you look at the history of the United States, I mean, we have a very muddled and problematic history. That maybe you don't know, there were germs that were spread over San Francisco, St. Louis. There was experiments, obviously, with the syphilis illness, with the Tuskegee experiment. We'll go into that a little bit, but our government tested radiation on people as well. It injected them with plutonium, for example, to see what would happen. So we have
Warner, can I interrupt you for one moment? My neighbor, the amazing John Stat, one of my amazing neighbors who lives just 2 doors down from me, his grandmother was injected with deadly levels of uranium, plutonium during the Manhattan Project in Rochester, New York, at the University of Rochester. She was told by the doctors that they were going to save her. She had some chronic conditions. She was an immigrant, a Jewish immigrant, didn't speak a lot of English, and they ushered her into the hospital and told her they were gonna help her treat some of her chronic illnesses. Totally debilitated her body, but she was a human experiment. And this was all exposed. I mean, this all came out. There was a huge write-up in the Democrat and Chronicle, one of our local newspapers. He got a box from the Department of Defense with all of the records and all of the horrifying things that happened to his poor grandmother. And the label on the box was HP, and I forget the number, but human product. That was how I believe it was human product, or it's horrifying that they would do that. And you're right. And no one ever was held to account for it.
Well, I would say really coming out of World War II is where you saw these massive population experiments, which we're in one right now, by the way. This is an emergency use authorized product. It's experimental. So we're in the biggest one ever right now. And it may have the worst. I
think we're in a mental psychological experiment too. I swear. Well, I think that they're like messing with our minds.
Yeah, no, they absolutely are. I mean, that's clear as day when the Smith-Mundt Act got reversed under Obama. If anyone looks that up, we were not allowed to propagandize our own people until Obama got that reversed. So they authorized this propagandization of the population after that. So we really are in, I've heard it referred to by various people as fifth generation warfare, where your mind is the battlefield. And you can really feel it here, especially with the way that the COVID injections were rolled out, and everyone was like, "You got to save grandma." Since when do we sacrifice children to the elderly? I mean, that's barbaric. So this was a barbaric process. The other thing I want to point out to people is that what we are doing now in medicine, and certainly with the mRNA. Just project yourself 100 years from now. We're going to look back at this like we look back at thalidomide, at the Tuskegee experiment, at other things. We're going to look at how our government is behaving and how public health has behaved, which is really an oxymoron. I don't think it exists, actually. But we're going to look back at what we've done as barbaric. And I think we've put ourselves into a population slide as well. Bill Gates was very clear that he wanted to reduce population. He's said that over and over. He's been involved in vaccine production all these years. You may be aware of the Kenyan experiment. I believe that was the tetanus vaccine that sterilized women. This is recent. We're not talking ancient history. We're talking now. So they rolled out this tetanus vaccine, sterilized these women to basically to test whether this would slow down population growth, which of course it did. It sterilized them. And we are sterilizing our young women and our young men now through the COVID-19 vaccine to a large extent. So, it's interesting to me too. I thought initially that, the anti-abortion movement would really grab a hold of this because this is an abortifacient. And it really didn't. There were a lot of Christian groups that I was very disappointed in for going along with the program, recommending to their parishioners to get the shots. And that happened in churches all across the United States. Now, we have found since then that many of these churches were bribed with federal money to roll these programs out and have programs within the churches. We found that about everywhere, by the way. Everywhere, anyone who's pushing it seems to have had federal money and they're somewhere pushing it. And that's, again, back to the mind games that were being played. They got paid for the messaging and for the opportunity to have access to the people that they could influence.
That is just outrageous. I too, I was devastated by the actions of the Christian churches, evangelical churches. In fact, I had a faith crisis. I don't anymore. It really, really devastated me. And there, I have emails that I sent to every pro-life organization that I knew of in New York to try to get them to say anything about the experimentation. The government under the Biden administration was paying mothers $1,000 to subject their 6-month-old babies to vaccination in a clinical trial that was rolled out in over 50 hospital systems across the country. And they were paying women for their babies to experiment on their babies. And I sent this email to every pro-life group, and they were actually mean to me. They were incredibly rude. And it just changed. It changed my whole, thought process on what the pro-life movement really is. But to your point about Bill Gates, it was a 2010 TED Talk that he said, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, we can lower the population by 10 or 15%. I mean, that is eugenics. It is controlling and culling the population of the globe. And I wanted to ask you, about the roots of, we have about 8-9 minutes left in the interview. There is a very strong, we're talking about 100 years of a very systematic, the building of this apparatus, the medical industrial complex, but I would say it is just an outgrowth. It is the military industrial complex posing as healthcare. And much of the agenda is to cull and control the procreation of humankind. You've been studying this, you've been looking at this in terms of case law. Can you speak to the eugenics roots of what we're dealing with today, so that the audience can kind of understand what we're up against?
Yeah, I mean, in looking at the case law regarding vaccines and vaccination, I really got into this, and I want to recommend a really fantastic book. It's Edwin Black's War Against the Weak. This came out in 2003, a long time ago. But it looks at the American eugenics movement, and this was backed by the Carnegie Institution, Rockefeller Institution, Harvard, University of California system, Stanford, Yale, all the major, what we would say, highfalutin elite institutions wanted to sterilize the feeble-minded, epileptic, and defective in the early part of the 20th century. And they literally teamed up with the American Breeders Association to have a eugenics records office to track what they were doing and how successful they were. And they wanted, the ideal, of course, was a Nordic ideal, and they wanted to improve the race, and they wanted to get anyone who was substandard to stop reproducing. That was really very clear. And this goes back to the beginning of the abortion movement as well. Margaret Sanger, of course, people have delved into that quite a bit. But guess who picked up this idea? The Nazis. And in 1933, they had a sterilization act so they could, get rid of the mentally handicapped and stop them from breeding. And then we know ultimately where that led, which is concentration camps. But in our own country, we sterilized at least 60,000 Americans forcibly in that time frame. Pre-World War II now. And then Buck v. Bell is just a horrific case. Let's start with Jacobson. Jacobson was the early case that said, yes, the government can do a medical intervention on you. And then Buck v. Bell expanded that they could intervene. This was like 1927, I think. And Justice Holmes, who's famous, he had an infamous line in there. And he said in that case, 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. That's what he said. 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. That's a Supreme Court justice saying it. And this case is still not overturned yet.
Wow.
So, and then
that upheld the government's right to forcibly sterilize a woman or an individual based on her cognitive profile.
Yes.
Based on obvious.
And it turns out, and she wasn't cognitively, there was not really a cognitive problem, but she was classed that way because of some horrific stuff that went in her background. So I do recommend people, there's another recommendation, look into the Buck v. Bell stuff. But then we move into the post-war system, and we've got Tuskegee syphilis study. We've got the exposure of populations to the biologicals, testing how quickly they spread, who would be affected. And we've had ongoing, as late as 2004, GlaxoSmithKline did a study studying AIDS in Hispanic and Black children in New York City. The children, I think they were in foster care, and there was no one to give consent for these kids to be tested. So the state, which ran the foster care center, gave GlaxoSmithKline access to these kids to test them for dangerous side effects of HIV drugs. Oh my God. I mean, so we can't, when I look back at the eugenics movement, I feel like, boy, it's continuing under other names now. And we continue to treat people as cattle. We continue to have that influence. And I think that's really wrong. Even the way we treat cattle's not right, by the way, because they're getting mRNA vaccines too, which we shouldn't be doing.
Right.
But we really need to understand the roots of all this and why individual human beings are so disrespected. And that's what our fight legally is about: is to vindicate the rights, individual rights in this country, which are supposed to be able to be there despite collective interests.
This is why we love the amazing Warner Mendenhall, and we are so appreciative of you. It's devastating, but you're absolutely right. Who needs an abortion clinic? Who needs an abortion clinic when you can, sterilize unwitting women and call the population?
Well, and there is a case in California right now going on. Michelle Gershman, I think she's changed her last name, but there's a case. She's the young nurse who saw the fetuses being dumped in buckets. And right here in Akron, Ohio, where I live, when that shot started to roll out in 2021, the first people I heard from were from the NICU at the hospital a couple of blocks from me. These young nurses came in tears about all the deaths and miscarriages that they had already seen in the spring of 2021, in tears. And one of the nurses who was, training still, doing her clinicals, she was the one who was taking them to the crematorium. And that just was not why she got into pediatric healthcare.
Well, I think now, and we have to let you go, I could probably talk to you for another hour, but I think now we're peer-reviewed clinical studies, are coming out, and it is very evident that something horrifyingly tragic has happened to the American people and to humans across the globe at the hands of our governments. And this is why we have to keep pressing, even if our people in HHS or in government, the federal government, even if they won't do it, we have to continue to pursue it. And if that means we go from the bottom up, from the inside out, we just have to keep pressing. You are much nicer than I am, Warner Mendenhall. I'm kind of mean about it, and that's okay. That's my role. But
well, government simply will not respond unless there's public pressure. I don't care who's in office. So it's up to us. No one's coming to save us. We have to get busy. Right. We have to bring the pressure, and we need to be involved at every level we can be, because remarkably, because of the federal experiment, some of the states did push back, and there was less harm in the states that did push back hard against some of the mandates. Right. So we need to make sure that system is preserved and the architecture of checks and balances is preserved, because that's the only thing saving us. And the millions of people who stood up and left jobs and lost jobs, many of them have recovered in the courts. And I think that's right. That's one of the things that keeps me going and keeps me happy about what I'm doing, is there's so many good people who stood up and fought, and they're winning. And, I know we've been talking about some terrible stuff today, but the more we expose it, sunlight helps to, what is it called? Sanitize the situation. So you're bringing sunlight to this. And we need to always be skeptical of all of our governments and make sure we understand what they're doing.
Absolutely. And so are you, Warner Mendenhall. It's one of the reasons you are such a cheerful warrior, and you never give up. And there are a lot of wins out there, right? This is not meant to black pill anyone. It is meant to expose where we can win and where we're gonna have challenges. And right now, I think we still, use our power of organization and our voices to stand up, speak out, hold these people accountable, regardless of whether or not we think they're on our team, but also engage and activate at that local level, throw a million wrenches into everything that they're doing, make this as hard and as painful as humanly possible. That's one of the things that I decided many years ago. I'm like, you know what, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down swinging, and I'm going to make this as painful as possible for these people to get away with. Like that, because there's nothing else that you can do, right? Like, if you're going to do this, then the very least that I could do is just make it really, really hard for you. And so, that's how I see my role. How can people help you? How can people help Brook? We got to let you go, but I want to make sure that the audience can be deployed to aid and abet you in your quest for sunlight, transparency, and justice.
Brook has a website called iambrookjackson.com where people can donate and help the expenses on that case. And I am part of a group of remarkable attorneys at freedomcouncil.org. And those attorneys need support. The infrastructure that backs those attorneys needs support. And we engage in education of the public about the law. We try to help victims, and we certainly try to help the great doctors that have stood up and are trying to do everything they can as well with their licenses under challenge. That's a whole other issue. So we're working on those things through freedomcouncil.org. And if you want to help out freedomcouncil.org, there's a donate button on that main page. So we would greatly need to help. It will help thousands of cases around the country by donating to freedomcouncil.org as well.
All right. Well, I'll make sure that I put that up in the live chat and also in the comments, and we'll get that on the show notes, and I'll keep it on my show notes for a couple weeks so that we can try to raise a little bit of money for you guys to help you with your causes. Keep up the great work. I'm so thankful for you, Warner. I really am. And everything that you're doing. Keep it up, man.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk today.
All right. And Brook Jackson, thank you as well. We have run out of time here on the Shannon and Joy Show. Really amazing interviews with both Brook and Warner Mendenhall, shedding so much light on what is still happening here in the U.S. This is why we can't let it go. This is why we can't trust their plan. This is why we can't accept that this is 12-dimensional chess. This is why we can't wait. And no, we don't always have to be nice, and nor should we be nice when they are harming so many innocent people, so many people who do not know better because they're being lied to by our federal government, not just Democrats, but also Republicans. This is our cause. And for those of you who were with us today on this show, I appreciate all of you. Would really appreciate if you guys take care of the people who are putting themselves out there. They're sticking their necks out. They take an enormous amount of criticism. It is not easy. They're outside of the two-party political system in many cases, and they need your support. So www.freedomcouncil.org. If you guys can pop that up in the live chat, they need your support, and we're going to continue to support Brook and also Warner, the team that is surrounding her. We want to get to the truth about what they've done to us if we possibly can. So guys, thank you so much for being with us today on the Shannon and Joy Show. We'll be back tomorrow to do it all again. We have Peter Schiff. We're going to be shifting into the economics, what is happening with the economy, tariffs, gold, silver, the profligate spending, the shutdown, you name it. How is that going to impact your wallet, your family? Are you going to take the crypto? Are you going to take the tokens? Are you going to accept a new currency system in the form of a digital currency and the digital ID? All of those things are coming. As I mentioned, COVID-19, the lockdowns and the bioweapon, that was Act 1. We're moving quickly into Act 2, and it is going to be economic, and it might end in World War III, tragically. But this audience will know what's going on, and you will be prepared because we're going to continue to bring you the voices that you need to hear from to be prepared and to survive and even thrive in these terrible, terrible times. We have Peter Schiff tomorrow. We have Henry Yoshida on Thursday and a big show next week lined up. Thank you to the producers from Died Suddenly who have done an amazing job producing the Shannon and Joy Show. We're so thankful for you. And of course, all of our sponsors. If you need to prepare generators, solar panels, satellite phones, Faraday bags, and beanies, you have to go to the satellite phone store, sat123.com. That is sat123.com, and always use the promo code JOY. The satellite phone store has been an amazing sponsor of the Shannon Joy Show, and they have everything that you need for when the lights go out, or an alien invasion, or the apocalypse, or a new scamdemic. You name it, they have everything you need. And we know that preparation is the name of the game. So sat123.com/joy. That is sat123.com/joy. And always use the Joy promo code JOY for an additional 10% off. And if you go to my URL, they always have great deals and specials for the Shannon Joy Show audience. Of course, we are thankful for the team over at Brightcore. I'm loving the kimchi. We're going to be talking about that tomorrow. Also, Sleep Max, and as you guys know, the Blood Flow 7 from Juvenon, an amazing product. If you have seen any products or services advertised here today on the Shannon Joy Show, make sure that you patronize our advertisers. It's how we keep the lights on here. We are completely independent, not funded by any billionaire backers or political activists or political action groups, political parties. It is just you and me and our advertisers. And make sure that you patronize them. That's how, like I mentioned, we keep the show going every day. So you guys have a wonderful day. We'll be back tomorrow to do it all again right here on the Shannon Joy Show.